All right, we are live, Mark.
How's it going, Rob?
Pretty good. How's that construction going next to you?
Talk about unexpected crises, right? Yeah, well, it's just down the block. There's nothing I can do about it, unfortunately. So I'm just gonna work my way around it.
Great. Well, Mark, thank you for joining us. So for attendees joining us right now who are joining early, thank you so much for joining the CosVox webinar. We're super excited to have a guest speaker today, and he's on camera. And Mark will be speaking about communications. But before we dive too much into the whole presentation and the good stuff over here, I just want to do some logistics and housekeeping with our attendees today. Right now, you should be able to see myself. I'm Rob Wu, the CEO of CosVox, as well as Mark. You should be able to see him. You should be able to hear me speak very clearly as well, hopefully. So audio and video is enabled. Once our presentation does start, we will be sharing our screens. We have a collection of beautiful slides that we've handcrafted together because we have nothing else to do and nowhere else to be. So we made that for y'all. So look out for that pretty soon. But in the meantime, as people are joining us, we'd love to hear who you are, where you're dialing in from. I know everybody's dialing in from home, but what city you're dialing in from, just put it into the chat window. We want to just make sure that works. We want to see who we're talking to, just to make this a little more fun and interactive. So when you have a chance, put in your question, put in who you are, where you're dialing in from in that chat box. Also, one of the questions that we have is, what do you want to learn today? Now, why are you actually here? Why are you joining Mark and I on this webinar? If you have any questions in terms of specific things you want to learn, feel free to put that into the chat box as well. We'll have plenty of time at the end of our webinar today to go over any Q&A questions related to the content. So watch out for that pretty soon. Feel free to chat in your questions as well. All right, we will be getting started pretty shortly in about 3 minutes. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee, cup of tea, some water, sparkling water, whatever floats your boat. We're very happy to have you. All right, hey Mark, so where are you? Are you in your living room or your home office? You have a lot of books over there.
This is my home office. Yeah, I have a little nook upstairs, and I've been working from home for the past 2 years, so this feels kind of normal, which is nice. Yeah, so yeah, you can tell I've become very cozy at home.
All right, I have a quick question for you. Are those comics or are those records?
These ones here, they're records.
Okay.
So this is up here is the business part, and down here is the fun bit.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The smart part up top and the fun side on the bottom. I got it.
Something like that. Yeah.
Great. Great. Cool. What's your favorite record that you have in your collection?
Well, I have about 1,500 records, so that's a tough question. One that I've been playing just this week that I bought recently is Brian Eno's new record, which is kind of ambient, gentle electronic music, which seems very well suited to these crazy times. So I highly recommend it.
Cool. Cool. What about a recommended book you have for our audience?
I am currently reading The Omnivore's Dilemma, which is kind of an old book at this point by Michael Pollan. But that's a pretty interesting one, always relevant. It's about food and how we source our food and the economics of the food industry, which I think is kind of relevant when we're stuck in close quarters, focusing very much on what we eat every day. That's become a very big part of the day. So yeah, interesting stuff.
Awesome. And one last question before we start. What's your #1 tip from working remotely or working at home?
My #1 tip, I think, is one that everybody's embraced now, which is the working on video a lot. I think there's a kind of fine line, a nice balance that you got to find where you can connect with people via video. And I think this is a great opportunity, for instance, to connect with you. You're at home, I'm at home. We can have a conversation and follow each other's verbal cues. I think that's something that doesn't always work over the phone. But I think also everybody's going a little bit video phone crazy right now, video chat crazy. So again, it's about finding that balance where you don't constantly feel the need to be on camera and as presentable as you would be on a phone call.
Yeah, for sure. I had to put on this button-down shirt just for this webinar, so You know?
Yeah, your hair's all nice and you shaved. And
I'll take a shower today. That's good.
well, I'm
All right.
glad we're not doing this call in a month's time or something, because I'm sure our hair's going to
Uh,
grow considerably in that time.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for that. Everybody here today, we're right at 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central, and 1 p.m. Pacific. So super happy to have all of you today. Welcome to the CauseVox webinar on coronavirus communications for nonprofits. So it's a really hot topic today in terms of COVID-19 and how nonprofits can navigate it. We talked about how nonprofits can navigate it from a fundraising side briefly a few weeks ago. And today, we're excited just to talk with you all on how to navigate the communications. So thank you for joining us. My name is Rob Wu. I'm the CEO and founder of CauseVox. CauseVox is a digital fundraising platform for nonprofits to help you stand up your digital fundraising in a post-COVID-19 world. So what we help you do at CauseVox is we help you raise more with less effort. What this really means is that instead of a clunky fundraising tool, clunky donation forms, donate buttons that don't convert donors online, or fundraising techniques that you can't do in person, we're a fully digital fundraising platform that helps you raise more with less effort online. We do it for all sorts of budgets. We even have a free plan that you can get started with for our small nonprofits, and also one-on-one support for our medium to large size customers to help you stand up your fundraising. Mark is from On Message, and Mark, I'd love for you to introduce yourself as well to the audience today.
Sure. I'm grateful to be with you all. I know that there are lots of things going on in everybody's life right now, and I'm just grateful that you're spending this time with us. If you're anything like me, you're feeling a little bit like this at the moment, where there's the stress of everything that's going on in the outside world, and at the same time managing what's going on in our homes. Just a quick word about what I do. I've been in communications for the past couple of decades. I've worked with nonprofits, but also in education and private sector a little bit. A couple of years ago, I set up my own shop, On Message Communications. I work primarily with foundations and nonprofits, but also with individuals and small companies. What I found in that time is that everybody's experiencing the same kinds of things or wrestling with the same kinds of issues, trying to navigate change essentially, and adapt to the ever-changing landscape that we all face. So that's something that I feel that I have good skills coping with, and the communications aspect of things really locks into what we are trying to do as organizations and as people. So I'm happy to be able to talk with anybody about what's going on right now, and I think now is when we're needed more than ever, because as we'll see in this conversation, it's about relationships, and communication is primarily about deepening those relationships and how you get people to partner with you or to fund you and things like that. So again, very happy to be here. I think this is going to be an interesting conversation. I'm going to go through the situation right now and then talk a little bit about having a plan in place and what that can look like in very practical terms, and then talk about the opportunities that we have in this crisis. And then I'm going to hand it back to Rob, who will talk a bit about digital fundraising, which is a huge component of what we're going to talk about today. And then we're going to open it up to questions, and I think that's actually going to be the most interesting part of this conversation. So just to kick it off, again, I think we're all aware of everything that's going on, but I think we need to be aware of the fact that everybody is going through something different right now. Everybody has some challenge in their life that they bring to a conversation or to an email exchange or to a meeting, and you can never make assumptions about what people are going through. So I think this is a very interesting time that we're going through, because everything's changed overnight. I heard somebody say at the beginning of this crisis that it's almost like waking up every day to a new world. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I do feel, not so much now, but in the first few weeks of this crisis, it really felt like every day there was some new reality to adjust to. Like I said, I think in every crisis, there lies an opportunity, and that's really what I want to focus on today. It's the fact that you shouldn't really freeze or freak out, which I see a lot of people do, but focus instead, and focus on what you can achieve during this time. Like I said, in every crisis, an opportunity. This may seem like the end of the world to some organizations, and I know that a lot of people are struggling, but I think that this is a good time to polish your plans and really think about what life is going to look like in the next few months, and then beyond that as well, because it's not just about what we're experiencing now. So take a deep breath, focus, and I think focus on your plan and add a dose of creativity to what you do, because there's so much noise out there at the moment. And pretty much if it isn't about the coronavirus, it seems like people don't have any bandwidth. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit as well, in terms of getting your messages to resonate a little bit more with people that you're communicating with. So to start off, I'm just going to go through these slides very quickly. The main thing that I'm going to focus on is the strategy. Do you have a plan in place? Do you have a crisis communications plan? If you do, great, dust it off, because usually it's the kind of thing that takes a lot of time and effort that people invest in, and then they kind of enshrine it, put it on a shelf, and they don't really revisit it. But it's actually a living document, or it should be a living document that you revisit periodically, especially when you're in a time of crisis like right now. It's the perfect opportunity to revisit your plans. If you don't have a communication strategy, an organizational strategy, or a crisis plan, now is the time to create one. So again, don't panic about any of this. If you don't have these things, it's okay. Use this time wisely, and maybe this is something that you could do while you're on lockdown, if you are on lockdown. I like to say that communications is an art and a science. It's an interesting blend of both. A lot of times people talk about communications as public relations, and it's not measurable, or it's just it's vague, and it promises the moon and it doesn't deliver. But really, it is a science, and it can be measured, and you can tweak it and fine tune it in a scientific way. But you have to have a plan, essentially. The plan is the 6 steps that I'm going to outline here. The plan is really the science of what we do in communications. And whatever your strategy looks like, it should have these components. And I think this is within everybody's reach. The 6 different components are the objectives, the stakeholders, the messages, actions, channels, and then the measurement and evaluation. And as you can see, this diagram here, which really, I think, showcases the fact that it's a cycle. And like I said, it shouldn't sit on a shelf or on a drive somewhere. This is something that you should be using pretty much on a daily basis to guide you. It's a reference document, a living document. So this is something that if you don't have, you can polish, set out your objectives, especially now in the time of crisis. Have your organizational objectives changed? Because there are organizational objectives which guide everything that you do in your work, and then the communications objectives should plug into that. Has that changed dramatically with the coronavirus crisis? If it has, then you need to really specify what has changed, outline your goals, and then how it's going to change your communications goals. Do you need to fine tune your communications goals if you have some? And really think about how you're reaching out to stakeholders. Who are your audiences? And again, be as precise as you can with these kinds of things, because the specificity and the focus really will help. And this is very much a science. Who are your stakeholders? Who are the audiences you're trying to reach? Who are they exactly? How are you reaching them? Are you reaching them? Are they, if you're, for instance, a grant seeker, a nonprofit organization, you're looking for funding, have your funders disappeared overnight? Or are there new funders that could be on the horizon? I think it's a really interesting opportunity to explore this. And then also, are you recalibrating your messaging? I look at the traditional commercial world and how they're communicating right now, and I don't know about you, but I'm still receiving a ton of emails about what people are doing in the COVID-19 crisis, and I'm still getting a lot of advertising that doesn't seem relevant. And I think that's kind of critical right now. If I'm getting ads for cruise ships, it feels really tone deaf. So it's a good time to look at what you're doing and to really think if it's going to resonate with your stakeholders, or if you need to change what you're saying dramatically, or if it's just a small fine tuning. Again, these are the scientific parts that you can really do fairly straightforwardly, I think. Then are your actions and your tactics adapting to the new reality? Are you adapting to new channels? Clearly, you can't, you can't send people annual reports, you can't send them documents, you're not going to have in-person meetings. Most of your communication is happening like this now. Are you online, pretty much? If, for instance, is your fundraising digital? If it isn't, it should be. I mean, this is really the perfect time to pivot to maybe something that you've had in progress or something you've considered. Now is the time to really think about how you're going to do that. I've had some interesting conversations really recently with people who are talking about how to adapt on the go right now. And just to give you a couple of examples, people talking about large-scale events that they're going to do. And I've really seen all different kinds of events, galas and things like that. Are we going to be holding those kinds of things in the future? I don't know. But people are having conversations about maybe doing them digitally or not doing them, and maybe using the money for other kinds of needs right now, so that it's much more relevant to their audiences. So again, are the channels appropriate? How can you shift? One of the great opportunities I think you have is that we have a captive audience. I hate to put it like that, but we are pretty much captive of our environment right now, and we're stuck in front of computer screens and our phones, and we're a lot more in tune with that kind of communication. So are you taking an opportunity? Are you taking advantage of that opportunity? I guess is the main question. And then are you reevaluating as you go along? I think that, again, people think that once they've invested the time and effort in this kind of exercise, they can then just walk away and just follow the plan rigidly. But I think that what this kind of crisis demonstrates is you need a working document that you revisit constantly. Is it still working? What kind of feedback are you getting from your peers, the people that you fund, your communities? What are people telling you? And again, great opportunity to build relationships and maybe ask people what they think. What do you think of these messages we're putting out? You can test them with small groups, small focus groups. And again, evaluate what you're doing, and then make that feedback into how you're planning the objectives and how you're approaching the stakeholders. And this will help you identify opportunities that maybe you didn't see before. Again, I think there's a huge opportunity in the sense that we're all stuck at home for the most part, not all of us, but the fortunate ones are stuck at home, able to be with our families and protect ourselves. But there is very much a different dynamic at play right now. And I think that now is the opportunity to build and nurture relationships with your stakeholders in a slightly different way. The fundamentals, the good news is the fundamentals of communications, those 6 steps that I outlined, the science of it remains pretty much the same. It's just a matter of how you adapt it to your new reality. In terms of the art, and I think this is always the tricky part for a lot of people, because they think that communications is very much an art. There is an art to it, and the art is really how you adapt, how you change your messaging, how you change what you're saying, and finding the right tone for your brand. I was thinking about this morning, and I think that this is the time during a crisis, especially a crisis of this magnitude, is really where you discover what your brand is, which is what you stand for. It's not your logo, it's who you are as a person or as an organization, what you stand for, and your actions really do speak louder than words. So I think this is the perfect opportunity to refine your branding, refine your voice, find the right tone, find what's appropriate, connect with people's heads and hearts, but also think about what people are going through. I'll just use my own example. At the moment, I look through my inbox and I'm seeing a lot of messages that seem to repeat the emails that were coming out in the first couple of weeks of the crisis. So it's here's how we're handling the crisis. Here's how it's affecting us. And it's really not about you as an organization, it's about them, the people that you're serving, the people that you work with. And it's really good to remember that, because like I said, I get ads from the cruise industry, and I get emails from people from banks telling me how they're handling the crisis. And right now, those things just go straight to the trash can. I hate to say this because I have friends who are doing this right now, but for instance, I get annual reports in the mail too, and I think, are you going to click on an annual report right now? There is a very, very slim chance that anyone is going to click on a PDF of a report about what your organization has done in the past year right now, because that's not what we're focused on. Just think about your own reality and the kinds of things that you're sharing with your friends and your family and your colleagues, the things that really resonate. And I think that's where the art is, it's being relevant to people's needs. I'll just use 2 examples so that I'm not picking on anyone. But for instance, the Gal Gadot celebrity sing-along that happened a couple of weeks ago, which you can look up, was a fail. It was well-intentioned, well-meaning, and I think that that's applicable to a lot of our communications. They wanted to lift people's spirits up by doing a sing-along of John Lennon's Imagine. The problem was that that's not what people were looking for right then. It was well-meaning, but it didn't resonate with people because it didn't meet their needs. At the point this song came out, people were thinking, how am I going to survive? Am I going to keep my job? How am I going to keep my organization going? Funding's drying up. All these kinds of big existential worries, and no sing-along is really going to help you with that. So again, it's about finding the right tone and thinking about other people's needs, and I think that's crucial. I wanted to showcase a quick example, which was actually fairly low production values and an easy lift. It was Max and Mel Brooks, Mel Brooks, the comedian, who is, I think, 92, who is stuck at home, and his son, who's on the other side of the window, went through a list of, it was kind of like an informal PSA outlining the do's and don'ts during the time of coronavirus. And it resonated because it really helped people think about the small steps that they could take to safeguard people close to them in a humorous way. It was just a really nice, simple message, easily made, funny, lighthearted in the right way, and very much on brand for them. So again, find the right opportunities and put some thought into how people are going to receive it. If you want to cut through the noise, though, you really do need to connect with people's heads and hearts. So for instance, the heads, the annual reports, the hearts, it can be thinking about people who are close to you or your grantees or the people you serve in your community, but really thinking about people first. Just to sum it all up, I think the future really does belong to the people who are going to put in time and effort into adapting to this new environment and thinking of new ways to reach people, to cut through the noise. Because right now, 99% of the environment is really about the coronavirus. So what can you do to cut through and get to people right now? Follow the framework that I outlined, the 6 steps, but really invest feeling and meaning into your efforts and be relevant to people's needs. It's about them, not you. Now people need your support more than ever. Nonprofit organizations are going to be vital to the next steps. I see more need in all communities right now, and we, Rob and I and CauseVox and our message really want you to survive and thrive and succeed in what you do.
Awesome, thanks, Mark. So, Mark, I really love kind of what you talked about the heart as well as science, and I kind of wanted to extend that with communications, and especially how communications right now for nonprofits can tie into fundraising. That's one of the biggest questions we're getting, where, well, can I fundraise right now? How do I do fundraising? How do I navigate around this? So a few different tips I want to share within the next few minutes on how you can really tackle communications related to the coronavirus for your nonprofit. So the first thing you need to do, and this one of the things that we first did when the coronavirus hit, was we sent out an email to around 3,000 nonprofits that are customers that consume our content, just a selection of them. And we got some feedback in terms of what they're doing in order to navigate around this. The biggest thing that we found is that you really have to tackle this coronavirus issue head on. If you don't mention it in your communications, then you're going to be tone deaf. What this also means is that you kind of having the COVID-19 mention, as well as understanding that the environment has changed, helps you build empathy and also to be more responsive to your audience. These folks over here, they're not practicing social distancing, but what I do want to share are some examples from 2 of our organizations that did a really good job of announcing the impact of COVID-19. So Mark mentioned that it's not just about saying, hey, what we're doing as an organization. It's really about positioning yourself as how we're serving you as a donor, as a supporter, or as a consumer of our projects and programs. So the first one I wanted to share was from Old Greenbelt Theater. This is just their website here. Let me just kind of zoom in a little bit more so y'all can see it. When you go to their website, they have a section about COVID-19. So it's an open letter about how it affected their program at their nonprofit. Old Greenbelt Theater is this super cool, old school theater in Greenbelt, Maryland. I had the pleasure of visiting their theater last year or 2 years ago with one of our friends of CosVox, Kelly. She gave me a whole tour of it. So they do an amazing work over there. They're an arts organization. So one of the first things they did is they actually posted this. And instead of just saying, hey, COVID-19, we're keeping our workers safe, or we're closing down, they actually did something really interesting in this paragraph here, which I've highlighted, where they're announcing that, hey, look out for new programs that we're launching because of COVID-19. So they're being very responsive to their donors as well as their supporters. So I really love how they tackled this issue head on. Another example that I want to show you is from Amigos International. Amigos International, they're based in Houston. They basically get people, get younger adults together on different type of programs to experience travel abroad. Obviously, a lot of their programs are international. That's not happening this year. And I think what was interesting is that in their letter announcing COVID-19, it's not just about them, about Amigos and how they need funding, how this is disrupting their programs, but they actually did the same thing too about how people can look out for changes in terms of volunteer opportunities, in terms of programming in the coming weeks and months. So announcing and teasing out how they are adapting to the new landscape of COVID-19. So the first step that you want to do is just really tackle COVID-19. Accept that this is happening, accept that this affects your fundraising plans as well as your programs for 2019. So the format that both of these examples have is first, acknowledge the issue of COVID-19. So acknowledge that in communications. Two, update your audience in terms of where they are and where you are. And then three, pave a new way forward of adapting your projects and programs. So that's number two. When you look at a lot of these organizations and how they're communicating, it's very difficult to communicate an idea that's outdated or an idea that just doesn't sell. So as Mark mentioned, right now, if you are a luggage company trying to sell luggages, nobody cares. Or if you're a cruise liner trying to sell cruises, nobody cares either. So the same thing with a nonprofit. If you're selling your existing project and programs in a pre-COVID world, it just won't sell as well. It won't resonate as well with your audience as well as your donors. So the next thing you need to do is really adapt your programs so that it makes it easier for you to communicate and market what you do. So just to go back to the old Greenbelt Theater example, so they issued this closure over here, but one of the things they actually did very quickly is they went full on to virtual programming. So on the homepage, you click on online programming, you notice that instead of having folks go to the theater and to experience the programs, they've been able to adopt and change and do a lot of virtual programming. So folks can watch a movie of the week, or they can purchase a screening. So this way programs can continue, impact can continue without having to gather everybody in one place. So this way it makes your comms teams and marketing teams, their jobs a lot easier. So then they can actually have something that's relevant to talk about and to go out there for your audiences. Amigos did something interesting as well. They went on to change their in-person programming to also virtual programming. So they have info sessions on how people can apply, as well as info sessions on how people can partake in the virtual programming. So the next thing you want to do to consider is, after announcing the impact of COVID, is really just to see how you can adapt and stand up your programs in a post-COVID world. All right. So that's number one when it comes to some of the communications related to your programming as well as your fundraising. The next thing is along the lines of creating content. So one of our friends, excuse me, of CosVox, Good Dog Ventures, Good Dog Strategies, Mark, Jeremy Bivens from there. Jeremy just did his great storytelling course for us. And one of the tips was around this concept of newsjacking. So what newsjacking is basically you following current events and then creating different type of content and communications around that. So for example, a news relevant post, a blog post that you can post on your blog or send out to your audience is something that really talks about what people are experiencing today. So for example, if your nonprofit does mental health programs, mental health initiatives, something that you want to do is see how you can craft that type of program for people that are just stuck at home, that are socially distanced, that haven't had physical contact or face-to-face contact with somebody in 2, 3, 4 weeks, or however long the stay is going to last. So that's something you can do in order to adapt your projects and programs and have communications that tie directly to it. So these really function as kind of soft op-eds. They basically convey your organization's point of view while tying into the broader mainstream media narrative. So in order to do that, the first thing you want to do is craft a strong headline. You want to use some keywords that some of the kind of the major news media are using in order to tie in your content with their post, with their article. And then from there, in step 2, what you can do is explain how your organization fits into the context of that news item. So if we're taking the example of social distancing, everybody's staying at home. If you're a mental health organization, then you talk about how your work, you have a framework and a step-by-step on how people can exercise wellness as well as being at home. And then 3, now that you've laid out kind of the issues of your point of view, then you have a call to action. So this is what I call the most important piece of this piece of content, is where people can actually learn more about your programs or how they can support you. So, and then you can close it out. This is a great way just to publish something that's very broad, that applies to a lot of people. It will help you extend your reach so you're not just talking to the same audience. And then from there, it will even help you gain more subscribers and more donors to your nonprofit. So we talked about crafting your programs, announcing it. We talked about how you can use newsjacking as a concept in order to gain more traffic as well as awareness. The last thing that I want to do is actually talk about how you can do some digital fundraising. So how you can apply these concepts, leverage it for actual fundraising. We actually do have a webinar coming up this Friday on how you can use digital fundraising in this time. But I just want to point out, tease out a few different things for you. So in terms of what other organizations have been doing currently with the coronavirus on CauseVox for fundraising, I just want to point out a handful of them. So one of the ones that we've seen pop up is from the North Texas Food Bank. They're a customer of ours, and they're taking this concept of having a landing page for their fundraising. So instead of just directing folks to a general donate button, they're actually going to each one of their partners and asking them to sponsor a virtual food drive. So they're standing up this landing page through the CauseVox platform. Each company, this one is by DTCC. I have no idea what that company does, but they're doing great work. And they sponsored this as a co-branded campaign site for COVID-19 fundraising. So this is really interesting because it helps you craft your communications. Mark went over the 6-step framework, the science. One of the most important pieces is who your audience is, so you can craft a message around that. So instead of just directing everybody to one generic donation form, they're directing a specific audience, which are DTCC employees and staff members and customers, to a specific co-branded page. So that they can make donations and track that against them. So you can create this with the CauseVox platform. They probably did this in about 15 minutes, and they were able to get 54 donations so far through our platform. So that's something you can easily do. And we see a lot of success so far. Another nonprofit that we've seen go live pretty recently is Supply Hope. They're a startup nonprofit in Baltimore, so very small. I don't think they have any full-time folks running this organization, but so far they just launched it. They have 3 donors so far. One of the things that they're doing over here when it comes to digital fundraising, so in addition to using CauseVox for the campaign site and easily doing that with an IT person, they're actually crafting their programs in a way where they're helping people understand that COVID-19 is affecting the people that they're looking to serve. So Nicaraguans, is going to affect South America very soon, very quickly, and they want to be prepared for that. So instead of just asking their donors to donate to a general program of Supply Hope, they're actually changing the perspective and tone to raise funds for the people that need it the most and have that tie to what their donors actually resonate with in this COVID-19 environment. Here's another one too. Here's a homeless playtime project. This is really interesting. They're a small nonprofit based in, I think they're based in Maryland. I did visit them a few years ago. But anyways, so this is their campaign site. So what they typically do is they provide services for underprivileged kids for after school work. So right now, the issue that they're explaining is that their programs are interrupted. They can't do it. So instead, they've adapted their programs to have in-home kits that kids can take home to their parents and they can run these programs themselves. So this is one of the ways we're tying in what we just talked about in terms of adapting your programs and then crafting in a way where you can actually have a fundraising campaign and raise funds for the mission. They're using CauseVox as well to run this campaign site. They were able to launch this in a few minutes, and then from there, have social sharing integrated, as well as some of our other powerful fundraising tools to help us celebrate their fundraising progress. This is one of the ones that have been around for about a week or two. This is the Hebrew Free Loan Society. They're based in New York City. So far, they raised $309,000 out of $650. What I really love about this campaign is that they actually crafted their narrative. So instead of just raising funds, so what they do is they give out essentially interest-free loans to people in the community that need it to either start their business or to do whatever they need with it. So what I really love about this is that they crafted a coronavirus loan fund. So instead of just saying, hey, we're funding people and please donate to us, they actually crafted a specific fundraising campaign to launch the fund of a specific, for a specific need. So we all know that small businesses suffering like crazy right now. We all know that there's 6-7 million people unemployed. So I think this comes at a very good point where they've adapted their programs and their fundraising to the specific need at hand. And I fundamentally believe that nonprofits have an outsized ability to create impact during this time. All right. What else do we have here? So we have Global Friends Foundation. So they're fundraising for COVID-19 too. So a lot of folks ask as well, is it the right time to do fundraising? And the answer is yes, if you have the right message. So that's why this is so important. So you've seen a lot of examples so far of people fundraising. Here's just one last one over here, where the Global Friends Foundation, they're a small nonprofit as well. And they've done something really similar to Supply Hope, as well as very similar to the Hebrew Free Loan Society, that they're crafting a campaign to raise funds for some of their international programs, to distribute materials, distribute masks, to prevent the spread of COVID-19. So they're doing this. It's a relevant campaign because everybody knows the impact of COVID-19, and people still want to help the programs and projects so that they can continue to impact. One last thing over here that I think would be really valuable is that we've seen a lot of success of organizations, instead of just controlling the narrative, controlling the communications that go out from the top down, they're actually able to go from the bottom up. So one of the aspects that we've seen a lot of success with in the past, as well as right now, is this ability for your supporters to tell their own narrative. Especially as Mark mentioned, we have an audience today that's just sitting at home. We're running out of things to watch on Netflix, running out of things to do. So one of the great ways to utilize that is actually provide a way for your audience to share their story of impact, of why they're fundraising. So instead of just asking folks for donations, which is a very simple task, ask them to help you fundraise and share a story. So Lauren over here, she has a personal fundraising page. She's able to go in here, tell a personal story, and then send it out to her friends and family to raise funds for her organization's campaign over here. We've seen organizations that use this way of fundraising, they tend to raise twice as much as organizations that just do a typical generic donation form. All right. So that being said, couple different ways for you to apply communications to your fundraising, as well as a couple different live examples of organizations on CauseVox, our fundraising platform, raising a ton of money during this time and being able to create impact in their communities. All right. Mark, I would love to just take this time and maybe open it up to any questions.
That would be great. And I just want to point out one thing that I was noticing from one of the slides. You had a slide where the organization was mentioning things that you can do during the coronavirus crisis. And for instance, it was washing your hands and, you know, the usual things that we're hearing, but it hits on this theme, that one, where one of the things that you can do right now is if it's not relevant for you to talk right now, if fundraising is really not an option because you don't think either your donors are going to hear or that you're not the right person to convey a certain message, you can amplify the messages of other people. And I think that's kind of crucial. So I really like what they did with that, but I think there's also an opportunity to, while you're focusing on your needs as an organization, to also partner with other organizations or to lift up what they're doing.
Yep, for sure. So we love to take the next 10, 15 minutes for some Q&A. So there is a chat box in your Zoom interface over here. Feel free to chat us in any questions related to communications, to fundraising. Feel free to chat it in now. We wanted to make sure we have plenty of time for specific questions and answers. There's also a functionality here called Q&A. Feel free to chat those in as well, and we'll just kind of run through this. All right, so Mark, one of the first questions that we're getting is, let's see, George is asking, how do you think college athletic departments should be doing right now related to coronavirus communications?
Well, that's a really great example because it hinges entirely on, well, mainly for the most part on in-person activities and in-person relationships. But I think it's one of those things where you have to think about the short term and the long term. So in the short term, the options have narrowed. So I'm not going to beat around the bush with this, but for George, I think there are limited options as to what you can do. You can amplify what other people are doing in terms of messaging that may be relevant to your audiences, and you can also continue to build those relationships. So, for instance, now is a good time to, for instance, share information that you think that people might like or enjoy. Very kind of light touch communications. And then think about what you're going to do when the world changes. I know that we're not going to go back to normal, but what will the world look like in the next few months and beyond? And I think now's a really good opportunity to start thinking about that and try to figure out what it's going to look like for an athletic department. When games start again and students are back and you can do in-person gatherings, what are the opportunities that you will have at that point? So I think doing some advanced planning is a constructive way of investing your time right now, but also, like I said, it's not about you, it's about them. So what is relevant to your audiences right now? What do they need to hear? Do they need to hear about the activities of your department, or do they need to hear about topics that are of interest to them and you, where there's some overlap and where you can be a credible authority?
Yeah, great answer. We have another question from Barry. Barry's asking, do you recommend updating the messaging on our donate page?
I think that, again, it's the scientific part of what we were talking about earlier. It all depends on your strategy. So if you feel like your messaging is not getting through, or things have changed, the environment has changed enough to warrant a change of messaging, go back into your plan, tweak the general messaging that you have there, and then that should inform how you're communicating on your website, on your donate page, on social media, in emails. All of those kinds of things should really derive from that plan that you have. So for instance, the messaging was the third step, I think, and then the channels was the fifth step. So the question is not as much, should you change the language on your donate page? The question is more, should your messaging change during this crisis, and how should it change? And then how does it affect your actions and the channels that you use?
Yeah,
And actually, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I love the idea of like kind of taking it from the scientific approach of it. From the Cosvox side, we've seen organizations spin up different different donation pages and different donate forms. So they still have the generic one, which is just make a donation to our organization, and then they'll spin up like a campaign site that you all saw, or like a specific donation page for a specific fundraising initiative. And then once they have the communications that's related to the COVID-19 or a project and program they need to fundraise for, they direct folks to a tailored donate form. And that's something you can create on Cosvox. I'm sure if you have another system, they may make it easy for you to do that too. I'm not sure. But I think as a best practice, we typically recommend that you spin up something else so that you have something that's more tailored to that audience.
Which I think is great, because that's really the art part of what we were talking about, the artistic side of it is really, and I think that's what people pay attention to. It's how are people getting through? How are they cutting through the noise right now? And you know, a video like, for instance, the Mel Brooks and Max Brooks thing really resonated because it hit the right tone with the right messaging and the right time. I think that that's also key to this, but really the science of it is follow those steps so that you're doing it in a really smart way, rather than focusing on, okay, how can I make my channels creative? The question should really be about who you're trying to reach, what you're saying to them, to what end, you know, what is it that you want them to do? And then the art is how you communicate on a donate page, or beyond that also, because it's not just about a donate page, a static page. It's about how you then get people to get to that page. And I think that's where the creativity comes in, but it really should derive from these steps. And I think people are very quick to, I see it in lots of organizations, people want to go to the channels, like what should I be doing on Twitter or Facebook or my donate page? What kind of action should I be taking? But the question really is a little bit more upstream. And it's, what are your objectives? What is it that you're trying to do? How has the world changed? What are your objectives looking like right now? How has your audience changed, if it has changed? And then what kind of messages are you crafting? And how do you adapt those? And then think through the different steps in that kind of sequence. I think it really helps build a more intentional way of communicating. And I think that's crucial to what we're talking about today.
Yeah, we have something similar to, actually, to like skip the slide, where we have a digital fundraising cycle where it's about attract, nurture, and convert. So you notice that the last step is to convert, which is your donate form. And how do you get someone, once they are on your donation page, to finish their donation? Well, there's a lot of steps before that. You know, you kind of need to nurture and attract them. And I think what's interesting here is that on top of this too is this upstream stage of identifying what is the objective overall, what is the goal, and then how are you going to attract these people to different channels, and then what are you going to do to nurture them? So kind of answering those questions first is actually more important than tackling the conversion issue of what to have on your donate form. So I love that insight, Mark.
I'm looking through the questions. There are a couple that are jumping out at me, and I just want to tackle the one that I've seen from Tara, talking about a ministry that hosts after-school Bible clubs, and she's not sure how to fundraise when they're not able to hold the clubs. I think that's another one of those really interesting situations, because a lot of your relationship building, your communications hinges on those in-person gatherings and the in-person networking. I think it's an opportunity to expand beyond that, which is something that you could do when you're not in a crisis as well. But I think this is prompting a lot of that kind of soul searching as an organization. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an expensive effort or too complicated. I think simplicity is the key. I've seen different people and organizations try different things. For instance, very early on in this crisis, a pastor of a church that I know created a video message for his congregation, and it was just extremely heartfelt, very much on message in terms of what they say every week, and basically kind of emphasizing the idea that the church is not just a building, it's the people. And I think that that's kind of the same for what we're talking about, the communities that we build, and not just about places and offices, they're about people. So it's about how you connect. And I think that there are ways of doing it. That video was not too expensive, but they had some production values in it. I think it's something that you can do at a very low cost to reach out to people. Emails tend to get a little bit lost in the shuffle right now because there are just so many of them. I think finding ways so that it resonates with people in person, keep it very simple, but think about the relationship that you're trying to build with people and how you can do that effectively. Another example that I found very quickly was a friend of mine is running for Congress, New York 17th District, Allison Fine, and she's a communications expert. She's gone from fundraising and meeting with her constituents to not being able to do anything like that at all. So what she's done is she's pivoted and she's created a daily newsletter that she sends out to people, which is really not about her campaign. It's about things to do to stay sane, or things to enjoy with your kids, or news on certain healthcare issues. And really it's finding a way to do the things that she normally does, but in a virtual way, a digital way. And I think small lifts like that are creative, they don't have to be fancy, but those are the kinds of things that I think really resonate now.
Yeah, and one thing that popped up to my head when you're talking about kind of this virtual side is for ministries, is that we've seen a lot of ministries do virtual fundraising as well for their programs. So for example, the one I'm sharing here is Canadian Baptist Ministries. Yes, they are a larger organization compared to the question being asked, but you're able to, you can have a virtual fundraiser. It doesn't have to be in person, and you can fundraise for virtual Bible studies or Bible clubs, or planning for the future once you're able to get together, like fundraise against that. So the Canadian Baptist Ministries, they have this campaign site. They have the ability to, for some of their Bible study leaders as well as their participants, to create these personal pages as a way to tell their story and then have a place to raise funds from their community and from their friends and family for the organization. So this is powered by CauseVox. I've seen a lot of success of ministries doing this. So that's something to take a look at in order to increase your digital fundraising. We have a question from Kelly. So Kelly's asking, should we be adding, if you're able or if you have the means to ask, to be sensitive to the fact that many people are losing their jobs, or is that unnecessary? So I think this question is asking about how can we be sensitive to making a fundraising ask when a lot of people are unemployed or becoming unemployed?
Well, I think that is the $1 million question right now. I think that we're going to have to really drill down on who we're trying to reach, and there is a subset of people who clearly are not going to be able to donate right now. I've had some very difficult conversations with nonprofits recently about donations drying up. So I understand that this is a critical issue, critical to the survival of a lot of organizations. So there are business strategy questions, and then there are communication strategies questions. They interlock a lot of the time, but I think what people are really grappling with is a business strategy question. Somebody else asked, what about the timing of making an ask? It's the same kind of thing. It depends on your audiences, and if they are in a position where they are losing their jobs, it's not going to be front and center in their minds. I had one organization recently decide not to do any fundraising until the summer because they think that the messaging is not going to get through and people have other things on their mind. So they're going to switch to advocacy right now, and they're going to focus on other parts of what they do and plan to do the fundraising when people are not on lockdown, or whether it's a little bit more certainty about people's jobs and the economy. But I think it's also a matter of business strategy. That one of the keys that we always talk about with fundraising is you really need to diversify your fundraising base. So that when you're in a situation like this, you're not dependent on one kind of audience or one group of funders. And I know that that's a very tough thing for a lot of small organizations, but I think this is the opportunity to really drill down on who your audiences are. Who are the people that you typically approach for donations and for money, for grants? And then are they still relevant with what's going on? If they're not, will they be relevant in a few months' time? Is that something that you can strategize in the long term? In the meantime, maybe there's an opportunity for people who you hadn't considered as funders previously, who might actually be good funders as a result of this. Then there are also the resources, which a lot of people are posting right now, about funding coming out from foundations or community groups, or the government, state governments, local governments with emergency funding. I think tapping some of those resources is really vital right now too. But a lot of it is, like I said, about the needs of your audiences. And right now, if they're in freak out mode because of their jobs and their families and things like that, the reality is they're not going to be listening. So I know that's not as hopeful a message as I would have liked to give, but I think it's good to be clear-eyed about what's happening and differentiate between the short-term reality and then the longer-term reality. Because at a certain point, this is going to change. Life is going to get back to some semblance of normal, and I think it's about kind of pacing your business until then, and what can you do in the meantime. A lot of that is partnering too. That's one thing we haven't mentioned, but I think you can join forces with other organizations or other people. And this is really where we talk about community a lot, but this is an opportunity to really build community and to deal with these issues with other organizations. During times of crises, a lot of organizations band together and join fundraising opportunities. So I think, again, being a little bit creative with the ask is the way to go.
Sure. Let me see, what are questions we got? So Sylvie is saying, hey, I just want to thank you that this webinar has been fantastic. All right, that's not a question. We have another question from, thank you, Sylvie. We have a question from Stacy. Stacy's asking, what's the best way to perfect our foundation Zoom meetings? So Mark, you use Zoom, you were part of the Conrad Hilton Foundation before. What can someone do about this?
There are actually lots of things that you can do, and if you Google how to secure Zoom, especially now that Zoom is freaking out about the fact that there have been lots of negative stories about people crashing their conferences or broadcasting inappropriate things. So I think a simple Google search will tell you exactly what to do in your settings. But yes, you should secure it and make sure that it's not just an open session that anybody can join, because that's been one of the more interesting outcomes of this new technology and this new way of doing business. So yes, secure your connections. I'm happy to send a link if you want. You can reach out to me at the end. I have several links to how to secure your Zoom calls.
Cool. Hey, Mark, we have a great question from Brooklyn. It's a great name because our offices are based in Brooklyn. All right, so Brooklyn is asking, for organizations that haven't sent out their 2019 annual report, when do you recommend doing that? Maybe it's now is not the time, maybe, or maybe we should skip 2019 or do it later, or
yeah. I feel slightly guilty because I mentioned that earlier. I have friends who are sending out annual reports right now. It's not so much that they're not going to, and nobody's going to pay attention to them. It's just that people are not going to pay attention to them the way they would before. And I actually think that now is a good opportunity to revisit things like PDF reports, especially that we put out into the ether, and we kind of assume that everybody is really waiting eagerly to read these things. The truth is, it's very hard to read through an annual report of, say, 20 to 40 to 60 pages sometimes. So I think my advice would be, by all means, in terms of timing, I think you do have to get it out, but you just have to be aware that not as many people are going to be paying attention to it as normal. One way to change it a little bit, to spice it up, I think would be to do just a quick video, somebody talking about the key takeaways, maybe the 2-3 key takeaways from your annual report as an introduction with a link to the report, or by email, so that there's some kind of personal touch. Again, I think about how you receive documents. I get emails telling me about annual reports all the time. I don't really click on them a lot unless I'm interested in the issue, or unless I know the people, or I'm invested in certain outcomes. So I think it's again, how do you capture people's attention in this new reality where we're all, locked in and online, and we're receiving a lot of information. It's like information overload right now, the fire hose. So how can you cut through that? Any way of doing that in a creative way that you would enjoy, I think, is just a really good way of thinking about the problem. Would you like to receive an email with a link to an annual report, or would you rather, a person actually tells you about the 2-3 really exciting things that you learned through the report? So putting yourself in people's shoes and really trying to understand how they'll receive it, I think, is the best way forward.
Yeah, on that note, we've gotten a lot of questions here at CosVox related to folks doing virtual fundraising. And one of the ones I think are kind of a little bit tone deaf is that some of these organizations are thinking, hey, well, my gala got canceled, so I'm just gonna do a virtual gala and do an auction. So I kind of don't like that idea just because a lot of times at auctions, when studies have kind of taken a look at auction, like what people can auction for. A lot of stuff is like travel packages, cruises, like signed memorabilia from like athletes, and none of that stuff really matters right now. So I do think that if you do some type of fundraising, if you're going to go with an auction format, you kind of need to tweak it in a way where when someone is bidding on something, they're bidding on something that's relevant to their situation today. So putting yourself in the donor's shoes is very important. So very much agree with you, Mark. We have another question from Ingrid. Ingrid is asking, is it possible for an organization to get some assistance from CosVox in setting up a fundraising campaign? Yes, it is possible. Check out cosvox.com. That's our website. If you want to chat with one of us, one of our team members, feel free to email us support@cosvox.com. We're happy to help you with that. All right. Hey, Mark, what other questions do we have today? We have about
Well, I'm just looking through the last couple I've seen in the chat from Sylvie and from Leanne. I think they're kind of hitting on the same things. It's how much communications is acceptable right now, and with quick bites about honoring certain people work. So essentially, again, it's about finding what's right for your specific organization, your specific issue. You really need to think about whether it's relevant to people out there right now. I think focusing your communications, simplifying, light touch, but a high touch. So in that sense, like not bombarding people with emails, not giving them too much information, but really small things that are relevant and creative or just a little bit different from what they might expect, I think is a really good way to get through to people. So the quick bites, I think, is a good idea, as Leanne was mentioning. And then how much communication is acceptable right now really depends on what it is you're trying to communicate. So for some organizations, their issues are critical right now. If you're working on healthcare, now is the time to highlight your issue. So I think in that instance, it's a very, very appropriate issue. If you're talking about something that's not relevant to what's going on right now, I think you're just going to have a hard time getting through. So again, it's up to what your organization is doing.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's important to be able to adapt or create a new program that is relevant to the audience today. More and more so, people are just at home. It's going to be like this probably for another month or maybe longer, who knows? And they're consuming a lot of content. So the more content, the quick bites you have, I think the more useful it is. And as you tie that to the work that you do as an organization, that helps you raise more awareness. And especially if you can get that person's email address, that new person who reads your blog or subscribes to your newsletter, then I think that's important from a nurturing perspective, 3 to 6 months down the road when you're doing a bigger fundraising push. So you can think of like the time today as kind of building the top of your funnel, building your audience. And then once you have a bigger audience, it just makes it so much easier to do fundraising later on.
And Rob, one of the things that I notice a lot when I talk with different organizations and people is people are not specific about who their audiences are. You can ask people and they'll say, yeah, we're trying to reach this kind of group of people. But when you ask if they have specific examples, a lot of the time it's not that defined. And I think this is an opportunity, for instance, to develop your audiences. This is the opportunity to really look out there and see the kinds of people that you're trying to reach and to build those lists. And if you're creative, for instance, about how you email people or how you reach on social media or with your donation pages, these are all good ways of finding new people to add to your list of people that you want to communicate with. As I said at the beginning of this conversation, it's really about building relationships. Communications is just about how you nurture those relationships and what you say to people to influence them to act a certain way. But really, it's about building relationships. I think that is the key thing for any organization out there right now. It doesn't matter what kind of organization you are, what kind of work you're doing, building relationships is key. You have an opportunity right now to reach out to people, whether it's by email, on social media, through your website, through donation pages or asks, or getting other people to be your ambassadors and your champions, and getting their friends and their networks to go to you. So I think these are all just really interesting opportunities to connect with people, because even if we're on video, it's still about a relationship. It's us being able to ask each other questions and give each other advice and help each other, and that's really what a community is.
Yep, that's awesome. Well, Mark, it looks like we're about time. I just want to end with 2 more slides. So the first one being here is that this webinar you're signing up for or viewed is by CauseVox for digital fundraising platform. So not to get to all salesy and whatever. But unlike your clunky donate button or fundraising platform that's made for a pre-COVID world, we're fully digital here at CauseVox, 100%. So digital marketing focused donation forms to help you convert more donors that are 80% less steps than your current donate form, 60% less time than your current donate form as well. We have that for you to use. Peer-to-peer fundraising, where you can raise more, twice as much as we've seen on our platform. So you can get results in minutes, not days, not weeks, not months. You can get donations immediately. Also, we just released something just for the COVID-19, where it's our basic plan that is 100% free. Literally, it's free. You pay CauseVox nothing, which is great, because free is great right now. So in an era of cost reduction, in an era of smaller budgets, take a look at a free platform, because free is better than paying something. Yeah, that's about it. I think that's enough about CauseVox. Mark, you're doing some great work over there with On Message. How can people learn more about what you do? How can people talk to you further?
Well, like I said, I think this is, right now it's about building relationships. It's about helping each other out. And you can find out more about me on my website, which is on the screen right now, on-message.org. You can reach out to me by email, social media. And I would love to be able to help you in more detail. I've been looking at a lot of the questions in the chat and Q&A. I know that we didn't get to them all. So if you have questions, reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to help. More than happy to brainstorm with you. I know that a lot of organizations are facing kind of do or die moments, and I appreciate how critical it is. Like I said, I think we need you all more than ever. So that's why Rob and I are on this call, to really help you with that. Any way that we can help, reach out to us and let us know.
Great. So just ending the webinar today, this recording will be sent out to all of you who are here, who made it through the whole thing. We'll send this to you, and you'll have the recording. Feel free to share it with your colleagues, your friends. Getting some great feedback right now from the chat. Thank you for all Leanne says, thank you for all the insight and guidance. Sylvia says, this is a great webinar so far. Karen says, this is fabulous. So thank you, Karen. Well, thank you so much for your attention today. We will be sending these out very shortly. Check out Mark on-message.org. Mark's email address is there in the chat. Cheryl says, worthy of my time from Alaska. That's great. Thank you, Cheryl. Journal says, thank you so much. Very interesting. Thank you, Journal. Thank you, Teresa, as well. So thank you all of you today for joining us on our webinar. We'll be in touch. The next webinar hosted by CauseVox will be on Friday sometime. I don't know when. It's on our website. We'll send it out. It's led by our education manager, Candace Cody. We're going to talk about digital fundraising, all the stuff you can do with digital fundraising. She's a lot better than me at this thing with this presentation stuff. So look out for that. Very educational. It's going to be very tactical as well. Today's session was a little bit more conceptual, more on the communication side, but if you're looking for really solid fundraising tactics, go with the session on Friday. It's free to join. So thank you so much, everybody. You all have a great afternoon, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.